Good evening and welcome to Adventures in DeFi Kingdoms. This is Raph streaming to you live, high above the keep in the hot air balloon. Tonight, as always, I have Neindorf with me. Neindorf, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing all right. And I also have Kels and GuyKidd here, our resident WoW experts, here to regale us with their quests of loot, gold, and glory out on the world of Warcraft. And we're going to try to use this as a drawing parallels to what we then want to recklessly speculate out in, the what we have for DeFi Kingdoms, and hopefully start getting our minds wrapped around what's the next chapter. So, Kels, you've been on briefly before, but why don't you give us a brief introduction to yourself?
Yeah, thanks for having me on here. I got into DeFi Kingdoms a little after it came out. At the beginning, I wasn't quite sure of it, and I started late last summer, and I've been just head over heels on it. I've kind of grew up playing MMORPGs, started EverQuest way back in the late 90s. That turned into World of Warcraft, and then uh, had a family after that, so that became the focus. No more time for that, and that's where I'm at now.
I know the feeling. All right, Guy Kid, you are also a host of the Bogside Chats crew, and we've had you on a few times. Give us your quick intro too, please.
Yeah, good to be back. Thanks for having me, guys. Got into DFK around November timeframe, so pretty close to the top. Not quite at the top. There's a couple people that found higher price points than I did, but due to that, I was definitely a smaller wallet player in the beginning, and during the decrease in jewel value over the last couple of months, I've definitely increased my stable of heroes, if you will. I'm now a Gen Zero holder, so dealing with those dynamics of the game's been a lot of fun growing with the DFK ecosystem over the last couple of months.
Full blown whale at this point in time. So, how do you guys have modified the intro to your podcast then, right?
Right, we no longer are a no Gen Zero, no stable of 100 heroes. I think Fran's actually just crossed the 100 hero mark himself
Wow,
too.
that's
So
great. That's great. All right. Well, yeah. Thank you for that intro, Neindorf. How about take us to question of the day?
Sure. The old jingle of what's in your wallet, I think is appropriate. I think my question today relates to some changes we've pushed out recently, and it's kind of like, what items are you guys hoarding right now? Where's the well, yeah, I guess that's it. What are you hoarding?
I'll go first because it's not much. The cat's out of the bag now. We went in on some land earlier this weekend, and I kind of had to unload everything for this. I'm hoping to try to sell one of my pure, DR1 recessive, um, dominant and recessive, equaling the same warrior Gen Zeros. So if anyone's out there, this is my opportunity to shill that. Um, and so, I'm a little light on both the gardens, and I did win a raffle for eggs. And so that's what I'm holding on to is a lot of yellow eggs right now.
Nice. Okay.
How about you, Guy Kid?
for me, I've actually been using the item liquidity pools more. I've got about 200 Swift Thistle and a Crystal Swift Thistle pool, so that's been fun. Of just not necessarily hoarding anything in particular, but all right, if I'm gonna hold on to it, might as well make some type of passive income on it. And I think most of these things you don't have to worry about too much and permanent loss in the long run, but who knows?
Mm-hmm. All right, Kels, how about you?
And I am going all in on eggs. I found myself short when the hatching first came out, and I only had a handful, and I kind of want to get to the point where I have one pet per character or
Wow.
hero, and
Yes.
I got real lucky too in some of these duels and getting the tickets, and I ended up winning like 12 eggs so far. So
Nice.
just been stacking eggs. I think those are going to pay out in the long run.
All right, so tell us a little more then. How many heroes do you have, and like what's that number that you're trying to target for number of pets then?
I hover around like 40 to 50 heroes. I'm trying to obviously get that many pets, but as far as I think with the active heroes, I'm probably going to try and keep it like, 20 to 30 to really focus on those PvP type heroes and get the best pets that are going to match with those.
Nice, nice. Well, Neindorf, how about you?
Yeah, I think I'm basically hoarding everything, honestly, that I find at this point. I'm still not really selling a whole lot. And I find myself, I'm still using about three stand pots a day on the Dread Knight. I'm trying to limit it to three. I figure that's like double leveling, double, you get three instead of your six quests instead of three a day. But like when I run out, I really find it hard to go to the alchemist and make more. I'm like, I should just go buy three more instead of
Yeah.
using my ingredients. So I guess, yeah, I'm having a hard time really selling any of my ingredients yet. And I think the reason is because, that whole thing about pets and treats for pets. And I don't know, I feel like every item, and Frisky said this too, every item's gonna have value. So I'm kind of hoarding everything, I guess.
Yeah, and I just found out that I saw a post today that the greater crystals they're now in the LP pool in game, and so I don't have to sneak those in through DFK Earn. I'm really excited about that. So I have a feeling that that's going to start to absorb some of my spare jewel, any that I have here in the short period of time. All right, so let's go to the main event. And, I guess first, why World of Warcraft? Ninorf and I actually, we've only had brief stints in World of Warcraft. When I tell someone like my wife that I've probably spent like 30 hours playing it, she's like, wow, that's a lot. Are you sure you invested in the right place? But, actually, that's probably pretty small when it comes to like 30 hours, when you compare to like what people who this was a part of their life. And I think the reason why I bring it up is not for my wife to shame you guys on your experiences in World of Warcraft. It's more so to actually compliment that game was the number one game for many years. And they found something that was probably magical for many folks out there. And I want us to figure out and try to draw from what are the things that really made that work and made that tick. I think something that's really positive about the DeFi Kingdoms team is they're always harping that this is about the community and this is about community feedback. And so what better way than having a podcast talking about what has worked best historically and then trying to promote and advocate for getting features like that to be in the game. So let's start with Neindorf. Give us a very detailed list of your short experiences in World of Warcraft.
Yeah, so I remember, this is reaching back a ways too. I feel like this is like sophomore year of college, and college
Right.
was some time ago, double digit years. But I remember it just kind of felt natural, I guess. And it was like, wow, this system works. And I can see you kept wanting to get the next thing and like look around the corner to the next thing. And I was like, but there was no end to the next thing. And I was like, oh no, what's happening? And it was, I don't think I played for more than my 2 week trial because I was like, uh-oh, this is going to go bad. Uh, and, and it was something, I don't know what it was. It was just like, if it was that addictive nature that for whatever reason I had to kind of stay away from. But yet I could not avoid that addictive nature for things like, back then it would have probably been Oblivion, I suppose, or games like that. For whatever reason, I think for me it was just I stuck to the single player RPG style way longer than I ever did for any of the multiplayer online. So and honestly, I think that's really what it did it for me is, if you're gonna stick to the solo stuff, you can kind of do it at your leisure and play when you have time. And that's kind of what led me away, and I couldn't pull the trigger and keep playing, and go real deep.
All right. Well, Kels and GuyKidd, I think first I'll have you guys tell us, what character you played, what were your profession types, and then give me an answer of how many boars did you kill in the forest. So, GuyKidd, we'll start with you.
Well, it's funny you made the comment about your wife because when I first started dating my wife, she knew that there was something going on Wednesdays, but didn't know exactly what. As the weeks turned into months of us dating together, I eventually just had to tell her, like, I swear I'm not dating someone else. Wednesday night is raid night for WoW, and that's what I do every Wednesday from 8:30 to 11:30. So, I think that really speaks to like what's just really pulls you into WoW is the community aspect of like you really feel like you're part of a team and you're part of a group as you progress through these raids and these missions and everything together. As far as like my heroes and classes, I started with a priest. My original priest was the unholy one. That of course I was a healer as well, so that was fun. But I was a disciplined priest, so it was really good spec from a PvP healing perspective because you had a lot of dynamic heals that you could work with.
Nice, nice. All right, Kels, how about you?
So the allure of World of Warcraft, I tell with everything in crypto is about the metaverse, and this and that. And World of Warcraft was more of the metaverse than any project in crypto right now. I mean, it was a full blown just ecosystem, a world where you could just completely log into it every single day and just be completely entertained from the time you log in to the time you leave. There's just you could have a schedule of things to do. You could meet with people and talk to them. You could do PvP. You could do absolutely everything that you ever wanted to stay entertained. And that's just what kept people coming back to it. The competition, you would always be, pushing to have better gear than the next person, or do more DPS in a raid. And it was just one of those things that just kept you always coming back for more, and that was that's obviously what drew everyone to it. As far as what I did, I started late in classic, so I played a mage for a while, and then I kind of, as the expansions came out, I'd like to try new characters because it was a time that you could kind of reinvent yourself if you were bored of your old characters. So I think for Burning Crusade, I went to a rogue, and then I stayed between like mage rogue and some druid, mixed in there. Everyone kind of had alts that you would level up, and so but mostly it was mage and rogue. I like the DPS aspect of the game.
Did either of you guys ever run multiple heroes at once?
I never did. You had to have like special like programs to do
Yeah.
that. Like, but yeah, I never did that.
And that
Yeah, I
was
didn't
kind of frowned
either.
upon too, wasn't it?
It
Or
very frowned upon.
oh, okay. I
Yeah.
guess I mean, I wasn't aware of just how taboo it was beyond
And
just
Kels, keep me honest here too. From a licensing perspective, you would need separate accounts to like bot
Yeah, you
together,
would.
right?
Yeah, you would have to have like however many bots you wanted. You'd have to have that many accounts,
wow.
and
Right.
yeah, so it cost a lot of money. And if
Yeah,
you
so
got
you'd
caught
be
doing it,
paying $100 a month to run four heroes or four characters at the same time. And the people that were doing that mainly had probably a long-term initiative of selling those heroes, once they're max leveled or something along that nature. And I think that's part of the reason why it was frowned upon too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just out of perspective, what did those sorts of heroes sell for? I'm just sort of curious now, personally.
I never got into. It was this whole black market of like, because there was the black market of gold, because gold was the in-game currency, and you would have the botters that would just farm gold all day and sell it, and uh, that was the majority of selling. But you could sell accounts, but it was kind of this gray area because you could always get your account back if you provided the right documentation. So it didn't happen as a lot that I knew of, but I can't give you an exact price because it was very black market type stuff.
To the
Gotcha.
point where they just Blizzard frowned upon it so much that eventually you could just end up buying a max level character at the end of the day. So they just ended up just bringing those things in house because there was a demand for it.
Hmm.
Sure, sure.
Listen to the markets, I suppose.
No kidding.
All right, so now that we kind of understand a little more about your characters and your guys' experiences, like maybe pick out, your one or two Cloud9 moments in a guild where you're like, this was so much fun. And I'll have you go first, GuyKidd, then Kills, then Neindorf. I'll probably have you pick something that might be outside of WoW if you have any like guild moments where you're like, this was so much fun.
Yep,
And then I got a really fun
absolutely.
one from Clash of Clans that I want to talk about as well. So, yeah, GuyKidd, you go first.
My first one's actually a world PvP one. Kels, I'm curious if you've ever done this too. There's a special mount you can only get by killing the 5 leaders of the opposing faction. You would literally have to get like 75 to 100 people together to go raid the main cities. Because if you think of the main cities, like everyone's hanging out in there, and then you've got all the NPC characters as well. So we coordinated like 100 people together to go do the For the Horde achievement that I got this sweet epic bear mount from it. But it was a lot of fun and just a lot of chaos of having at that time in the game too of like you couldn't have 100 people in the same group together. So you literally had to have like separate raid groups that then could be coordinated in a voice chat or something beyond the game as well so that you could all like just travel to the same spot together. So the for the Horde achievement was a lot of fun. One of my favorite raid moments was there's a boss in one of the I think it was the Lich King raids called he was the dance boss. I think it was like Hagen the Unclean or something like that. But a lot of the raids they had berserk timers. So like if you didn't kill the boss within 5 minutes, his damage like increases by 300% or something like that. But with Hagen, he was called the dance boss in the sense of every, say, 3 seconds or 5 seconds, 3 quarters of the map gets covered in lava, and you need to move to that 1 quarter of the map that's untouched. But the trade-off of that is there was no berserk timer. So
Hmm.
if you had the dance down, the dance could literally go on for half an hour. And as long as you have a tank alive, a healer alive, and a DPS alive, the dance goes on. So I actually got to the point where I was the last healer alive, and it ended up taking us like 15 or 20 minutes to down him, but we eventually did it.
Wow.
No kidding. That's crazy.
Pretty stressful too, I imagine.
Oh, exactly. Especially when you're the last one left.
Yeah,
Wow.
I can echo a lot of that. That World PvP was something else. You would just be in your like home city and doing your, turning in quests or whatever, and all of a sudden you'd get these notifications: cities under attack, whatever, and you just would just see like a mass of people just coming in. The guards are rushing from all over. It was just surreal to see some of this stuff, this World PvP like in action. But I was mostly on the PvE side of things. I focused on just very heavy with the raids. So probably the best moment for me would I was one of the raid leaders for one of the guilds that I was in, and just organizing a raid with everybody and trying to coordinate and look at all the data that comes from that. Just sometimes you can't actually do a boss fight. You just don't have enough damage or whatever it is, and to get to some of these bosses where you just spend literally weeks fighting these bosses and just getting a little more progression on them, a little more progression on them every time, and then to actually get the boss down is it's like it's surreal just to see that all come like it's a symphony of everyone, 25 people, all up like in their A game and making it happen.
Yeah, that's got to be impressive. What are like so? What are like the job requirements of raid coordinator? Like, what's your checklist of what you're trying to make sure that everyone's doing appropriately?
Well, it's hurting cats is what it is. But so uh, every
100%.
every yeah, every raid would require a different, optimal classes. Like you'd have to have, you have to have a certain amount of tanks, you have to have a certain amount of healers, a certain amount of DPS. But then depending on each boss fight, sometimes you would need more range DPS or you need more melee DPS. So being a raid leader, I had to coordinate, make sure I had the right people in for the right boss fights. And then, a lot of the boss fights, we would have these damage meters going, healing meters going, and you would see just who, like, hey, you need to pick it up with the DPS, where we literally can't beat this boss unless your DPS is at a certain threshold. So I'd have to like get with people and say, hey, what's going on? Is this a gear thing? It was like bringing someone to the office and say like your work performance needs to go up. It felt like a job sometimes, but then and then also the loot. I mean, everyone does these raids to get the loot, so you'd have to have a system. Like you can't just everyone wants the loot, so we would have like this is back in the day, we would have these, they'd be called dragon kill points. So basically, every time you would show up to a raid and you would fight a boss, you'd get a certain amount of points, and then they would go into like an account. And we had a whole separate website for this that tracked everyone's DKP is what they called it for short. And basically, when loot would come out, there would only be a couple of pieces of loot, and then you could bid your DKP that you had if you wanted the loot. So it made sure that the people that were there for all the fights and all the raids every week, were able to get the gear if they showed up enough and they had enough points. So being the raid leader was just kind of coordinating all that, make sure it all worked out, and hopefully you can clear the whole raid.
But it sounded like that kind of balancing mechanism had to be done kind of outside of game.
At least for the loot aspect of it,
Sure.
Yeah, we had to keep we had a website. We had a guy that was part of the guild that built the website, and he kept track of all the balances that everyone had. So that was completely separate from the game.
Nice.
And it's interesting seeing the progression of the game over time, because that system turned into add-ons that could be built into the game. And then like you could say like watered down future WoW turned into, all right, well, everyone wins, everyone gets a prize, there's more loot for everyone to go around. But like that middle tier, the add-on piece was really interesting, where it would come up with basically everyone in your guild would have like a raid score based on how much they participated and things of that nature. So a lot of things that had to be kind of pen and paper on the original started getting slowly built into the game.
Nice. All right, Nidorf, what's your go-to guild moment?
Well, since you mentioned Clash of Clans, I was headed there too. So maybe I'll switch gears a little bit, and not necessarily guild, but I think we another game that we played a lot of in college was Halo 2. And
right, yeah.
We had some pretty solid players in our crew, and I still can remember one battle. I don't know if it was like one of those 16v16s or whatever. It was a huge battle. I don't know if maybe it was 8v8, whatever. And I'm pretty sure we unlocked the perfection accomplishment.
I remember that one.
And it was like, that was one of the all-time moments where I think someone was driving the Warthog and someone was gunning, and like we were just mowing people over left and right. And
yeah.
I
love driving the Warthog. That was my. And
yes,
so we had
you were
someone
a great
in the Banshee
driver
too.
Yeah, that was one of my all-time favorite Halo 2 moments. Is that one epic 16v16 battle, and it was like perfection. Like we just rolled them.
Nice. Yeah, these things are like, they kind of can become core memories almost. So mine is, I'll go to Clash of Clans. That one consumed a lot of my life. That was probably about 8 years ago now. Yeah, I remember, because my wife was pregnant with my oldest, and she'd go to bed early, and so I would play lots of Clash of Clans at night. And I remember as a mobile game, and the amount of coordination that would go into clan battles was actually, so I joined a hardcore clan, and people would actually draw out, they would take screenshots of the different maps and the bases, and people would draw out their battle plans of what they were planning on using to attack a certain base. And I was actually a part of a clan where it was so hardcore that if you weren't verified, or if you weren't one of the top guys, you actually had to get your drawing, your approval or your battle plan approved by someone higher up, to actually make sure that you had a legitimate strategy and you had a chance of winning. And I remember the exact moment. I planned out I think they were the warthogs or the hogs. I planned out a hogs attack, and at that point in time, we were also, every time that someone would do a battle, we were all on Discord. They got to pick what their fight song was, and so someone would play music, and just whatever it was. This night, I played for my battle. It was "Going the Distance" by Cake, and I absolutely crushed someone. And that's one of those things that just sticks with me. So
he's going for speed.
Yeah, right. He's all alone.
they hop over all the walls. I remember those things and playing
Yeah.
that in the background. That was
Oh yeah, that's
Right.
awesome.
Right. So okay, that's this is pretty interesting, and so it's like how can we get or like what are the elements here that we can tap into? How can we draw parallels? I think we're starting to see a lot of the camaraderie in community. Like Summons Night has been a lot of fun for me. If you guys are fans of our YouTube channel and our Discord channel, and so if you haven't checked out Summons Night before, please do that. We usually do that on Wednesday or Thursday nights. And, it feels like we're starting to gain some momentum when it comes to just kind of rooting for each other. And our interests are somewhat aligned, but that's not really attached to a guild yet. And so, some of the best ways to attach interest into a guild would be through economics and there being incentives. So I'd like to, I have some ideas we'll talk about, at the very end of the podcast of how we could potentially influence the economics of the game or, a certain proposal that I'd like to lay out. But tell me a little bit, Kels, let's start with you. Let's talk about the economics of World of Warcraft. And you started into this a little bit with the loot distribution. But, how do guilds impact the economics of the game?
Sure, absolutely, and I already can see some of the framework being built in DFK that mirrors a lot of what World of Warcraft did with the economy, and the guilds, the high level guilds, the competitive guilds, they basically they consumed a lot of materials. Whether at least back in the old days of raiding, you used to have to show up with mana potions. Potions were consumables were an absolute must to do these fights. Like you had to just show up with like stacks of them, and you could either get those by going out and gathering the materials, kind of like you do in DFK with Origin and whatnot, or you could just buy them, which most people did because we'd be raiding 3-4 nights a week, and you didn't have time to do any of that. So you would just go out and buy your stack of mana pots and show up to the raid. But for that to happen, people had to be making those. So the economies were just if you had a server that had like really competitive and high end PvP, PvE guilds, there'd be a whole need for these materials, and so there'd be people out there just farming, like kind of like the whole thing of you're providing the shovels. So
Yeah.
you can do that now in DFK with like the stand pots. Same thing, you can just go out there and build stand pots and sell them all day long and make plenty of jewel doing that. And the same thing with World of Warcraft with the guilds. So I see a lot of parallel lines being drawn with that.
Interesting. GuyKidd, what are your thoughts or experiences from WoW as well?
I think one of the interesting things that could tag over is, and we've talked about it a little bit, is the level gates when it comes to land. I don't know if it'll directly tie into guilds, but like having these higher level areas that you'll need to go to. Maybe that's an area that's controlled by a guild, or there's some kind of overarching of like this area is safe to you if you're part of this guild. I could see a dynamic like that being built out, which would be really interesting, tying in land and guilds together.
Yeah, I really hope that's the case. It feels like the natural connection point. And honestly, I probably draw for some of my Clash of Clans experiences is that I feel like lands are going to offer the opportunity to build some kind of in-game structure that allows you to, offer up, incentives of use to whoever's in the guild. And then hopefully there's some kind of, guild fighting functions in the future. I don't quite know how that would play out yet on a blockchain game, but I guess I'll have some ideas that I'll throw your guys' way a little later. So, let's segue to maybe some more of the negative is that guilds can also draw the ire of the public eye in that they can have some negative consequences on the game. They may isolate or alienate certain new players who don't understand the inner workings of that. I definitely saw that in my Clash of Clans days. Maybe Neindorf, being on kind of the outside looking in, anything that worries you about guild formation that you think we need to be mindful of?
think it's kind of it almost, there's like the whales game, right? Where if people can come with money, they can come hard. I think guilds almost magnifies that problem because what if you get a guild of whales, right? So I think that's one thing that I'm a little interested to see how you could not necessarily prevent them from running the game because I mean at the end of the day, if it's a play to earn, I mean, and you have the money, you're going to win, right? That's kind of some sense of how it works. But I think how they manage that and how they like I think your point about how does a new player find value for their money and fit into this system, I think that is going to be absolutely huge. And if we can figure out a way to get, new people feel like, A, they're welcome and they're safe and they have like this unique little corner that they can carve out somehow. I think that's going to be the tricky part though. If you can get to that state, I think it's going to be a little easier to keep new players. And because then you're going to get this new echelon of people that want to form their own guild, but you also got these other guilds that are like all level 20 plus, so you kind of have to make sure that everyone can play nicely in the same universe. And I think that's where I've not really seen a game, I've not been a part of a game that did that to that extent well. And so I don't know, maybe that's something that WoW had done where you had, beginners and, um, the veterans alike, but I'm not sure, I guess.
Well, GuyKidd, let's go to you next. I know you would. I think it was you who mentioned in our chat. Um, you're getting kind of spammed with, every time that you created an alt or you were thinking, you got spammed with guild invites, so to speak. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so guild invites in the sense of DFK or for what?
On WoW, on your World War.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you jump into the new player zones in WoW, and pretty much instantly, you're getting invited by a bunch of different guilds. And one of the big problems is like kind of what Neindorf's saying too, of like you're small fish in a very, very large pond. And I think it's going to be important if we have guilds or we have groups that are focused on helping players understand and learn the game. And I think that's going to be completely different than the like top tier progressive, hey, I'm going to win the entire game
Mm.
guilds. So I think we'll see a subset of guilds that have different focuses, and maybe we even have guilds that are focused on creating that economy and creating that supply, like Kels was saying, of having perks that are associated around like optimizing your production of your items and things like that, and then others that are optimized on combat and growing into these higher tier areas.
All right. Kels, what are your thoughts and, anything that you want to caution kind of if you were talking to Frisky Fox right now, what would you say? Watch out for this when you're influencing the development team's, direction of guild formation in the game.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with it being it could turn into a whales game really quick. I think the beauty of World of Warcraft was that it wasn't a pay to win game. So I mean, you could buy gold, but you still had to put the work in. There was no pay to win. Whereas DFK right now, if you dump a ton of money in it, you're gonna have the best heroes. You're gonna have all the stuff. You're gonna have everything you want. So that can get kind of out of control if you get a guild that's just full of people like that. And if there's any kind of content or that especially PvP, PvE. I mean, these guys have done a really good job of just kind of trying to keep things balanced between whales and new players alike. But as far as guilds go, I think it's absolutely like a net positive for everybody, whether you're new, because GuyKidd was saying, there was guilds all over the place that were advertised, for new players, for casual players, for hardcore players, and it was just a fantastic resource to hey, what do I do with this? I have no clue what I'm doing, and there's plenty of people in your guild most of the time there to help you out. So I think it's definitely a net positive. We'll just have to see how that translates to a crypto game.
Sure. Well, I guess maybe this is the let's maybe take a quick pause from our scheduled programming and look at YouTube and maybe some questions there. So YouTube listeners out there, maybe quickly throw out any stay away from X, Y, or Z that you've seen in guilds in the past that have been kind of those thorns in your side that you'd like us to talk about. And I'll go over one of my ideas to try to make a softer landing for new players as we're kind of diving into this conversation a little more. So something that I was talking to actually Neindorf and I, we had the Gen 1s out at a playground this morning, and I was talking about the idea of if the game does start to go the direction of guild formation, I am worried about it alienating or increasing the separation between whales and new players, and I think that's something that we absolutely have to keep top of mind. One of the things that I was wondering is, what if all players had access to join the Imperial Guild, which would essentially be like it'd be run by, I don't know if you want to call it Kingdom Studios, or maybe it's run by AI, but it is the Castle Keep at the center of the map. And so all quests that guilds can unlock or earn for the PvP, or excuse me, for PvE interest would be available there to new players. And so effectively it would, give the ability for new players to access, certain questing opportunities at a low risk entry, almost probably a no risk entry if it comes to it. And so you're kind of working for the game itself. And you're working inside the keep, and that's where you get your missions from. I think there could be a way that they tap into that in the game, that and you might have a mass of players or enough new players there that it also helps you with some of your balance. And I think if that doesn't quite help you with your balance, and trying to tip the scales to being whales, making sure they're not wrecking everything, is, developing some kind of, Neindorf, you talked about this morning, developing some kind of, like level system, elo rank system or tier system where, if that guild with all the whales, okay, they're level 10, if they raid a level 1 guild, they get penalized in terms of the amount of actual bounty that they get from that raid or whatnot. And, conversely, if you have a level 3 guild and you're going up against a level 6 guild, if you successfully manage to land a raid, I mean, boy, your payout's pretty strong. So, Neindorf, do you want to go through that idea that you had? I'm kind of stealing it a little bit here. Go through that idea a little more.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think there's a couple things I want to maybe discuss too. And I think another one that we mentioned as we were chatting was the concept of almost slowing it down too, right? So like we've got some heroes out there that are already level 20. They're a fifth of the way through the level progression, and we don't even really have a game yet.
Mm-hmm.
And so we don't even know what the skill trees look like yet. So I feel like you need to, once there is utility for land and we can start to build it out, I think it needs to be very slow and methodical. Like it might, we were throwing around this idea where you have to like almost quote unquote stake heroes into the land to. This is again kind of similar to some other games where you have got to kind of clear the land first, right? And maybe it takes, I don't know, thousands of hero hours to clear the land before you can even consider building a building. Some things like that to slow the pace of this down and make it so that A, you don't get this huge spread right off the bat.
Mm-hmm.
But then B, as there's only so many plots of land, right? And eventually the close ones will get built out. So you'll get kind of this metropolis in the middle, and it'll kind of, taper off as the further out you get. And I think that opens up, lots of doors for lore and new players and where people fit in. I'm sure I'm not answering your question, but this is just kind of where my mind was wandering. Sorry.
That's all right.
Now, yeah, I don't know. There's so many potentials here. I think we just need to kind of keep the ideas rolling. And I think the Rapid R forums that the DFK team has put out, I think all of us need to go there and just post as much information as we can think of. And, just hope that the DFK team proper, picks up and takes the best of it and moves them forward.
Because there's definitely going to need to be like a sequence of events of like other things need to happen before guild formation can be a thing, because otherwise,
Correct.
what's the point of a guild? And Raph, I really like your idea of like a Kingdom Legion guild or whatever. And I think that could be the tutorial of the game too, of
Oh,
like
there you go.
you can
Yeah.
build the tutorial right into the like the house guild or whatever, if you
Mm-hmm.
will, of having like certain things kind of triggered along the way as you're learning new aspects of the game.
Could there be a like built-in nemesis uh guild that you're fighting if you're in that generic one too, right? You know, like I go back to like, wasn't it which of the Elder Scrolls games where you had to kind of pick a side? Was that Skyrim?
Yeah, I think it was Skyrim, and
Yeah,
where
and like you kind of had to pick a side and you were just fighting against the other one. And I feel like
yep,
you could totally do the same thing
Hmm.
here.
yeah, almost like emulate PvP before it's really a thing.
Interesting.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly.
All right, so some of the questions trickling in here. Sergeant Filthy McNasty, how you doing tonight? Asks, any idea on how guilds will come to play in a 24-hour cycle? Right now, DFK leans towards North America heavy, but I suspect that will change with Caitlin. Um, I think that's something that actually being on the blockchain is fairly conducive towards being a more global environment. Actually being on the blockchain is it's really hard to handle what I would expect to be heavy time-based PvP combat in the future. But I think with guilds, or at least I hope with guilds, and I'll present something here a little later, that they could be more like PvE or long-term PvP, in that you can make your decisions, and the opposing opponent, if there is an opponent, has a time frame to react. Whether that's multiple hours, like 12 hours, or a full day. But I think you're really onto something here, though, is that this game is going to continue to trend to be transaction heavy throughout the entire day, not just during the North American hours, which it probably is right now.
Yeah, I have a good story with that
Yeah.
24-hour cycle thing. I when most guilds you try and find in your time zone, that you want to raid at. So like when you would join a server, that server had forums, and then you could go on there and see all the different guilds and say, hey, we raid Eastern Standard Time or whatever. But I had to switch shifts to nights one time, and so I was getting off work at 7 in the morning, so I couldn't raid with everyone. So I found a guild that was based out of India, and they said they were looking for people. They raided at 8 in the morning my time, which was night for them. And I joined this Indian guild, and it was fantastic because when you get that level of adoption that World of Warcraft have, you're gonna have people from just all over the world. So
That's
no matter
awesome.
what time zone you're in, whatever, so I just raided with these Indian guys for months, and I learned so much about the culture, and it was one of those things. It's like it's a game, but like I learned so much about life from something like that, and that's why I think guilds have such a huge place in a community like this, because you wouldn't get that anywhere else.
Right. And that's a testament to obviously the positives of a guild, having the opportunity to, meet new people, and, potentially learn about new cultures. And, I'm really excited about the Clayton expansion. It, wasn't anyone's first guess. Second guess, third guess. I don't know, maybe not even top 10. But as I've
I had
sat back and really thought about this, I'm like, wow, I think this could be really neat. So I think that opportunity is going to be there. All right, so next we have Maddie asking, did guilds in WoW have payment or other membership requirements? And I see that that's kind of being answered by the chat here, that it wasn't that I don't believe you had to pay for that, but give us maybe some examples of, like, I'm sure there was at least soft membership requirements, or at least implied requirements. What do you guys think? Maybe you go first, Guy Kid.
Well, so one of the big things, if you wanted to be like a progression raid group, it's kind of two tiers of it. Of like Kels was just saying, of you needed time availability of like being able to raid certain times of the week, as well as if you were top tier, there's like item level restrictions and things like that. Of you're literally not going to be able to contribute to the fights if you can't do a certain amount of damage, and how you measure that is based on the score of your armor and the items that you have. So there's definitely like gates as to like getting into a guild and being able to qualify for one. I'm curious if there's any other thoughts there.
Yeah, we so from my aspect as a raid leader, we would have no payment or whatever. But although there was a guild bank, and I was telling you guys earlier, like we could do a whole podcast just on guild banks, and I don't know how they're going to handle that on a blockchain. Is it going to be like a multi-sig or what? But it's definitely it was a good resource to have because your guild bank held the different materials. If you needed this, if you needed that, it was all in the guild bank. Um, but as far as membership requirements go, we had like this whole drawn out process where we'd have people apply on the website. It was like applying for a job. You know, you'd ask about who they were, what they their PC specs, all this stuff, and then we would comb through that, and then we would actually then say, okay, you can come on a couple of raids with us, and we'll see how you perform under pressure, and we would grade them on that, and then we'd have an interview with the officer board, and it was like trying to get a job but you kind of had to do that because you needed people that were going to perform at their absolute best for some of these, if you're on the
And if
cutting edge
it's
of progression.
yeah, if it's 2 to 3 days a week, like you obviously want to gel with that person from like a culture and dynamics perspective too, because you're probably spending 15-20 hours a week with this person.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not. It's sometimes it's like when you're going to a raid and you just keep wiping on the same boss over and over and over, and that's part of it. That's part of progression.
Yep.
Tempers can get like you start blaming people. "Oh, well, you're not doing your job. You're not doing your job, and it can get pretty tense. So you definitely have to have people that can just get through the tough times together, as well as the good times.
Yeah, and the people that'll take that accountability of like I screwed up. But I just remember like you talk about like low places in a guild of like we spent probably like 3 hours on one boss, and it was like every single time that we wiped, there was like something that went wrong. And like this poor guy, like he meant well, but like he was just having a shitty internet day. And his internet went down like 6 times in a row at the worst time in the raid boss. And it's just like stuff like that can be really frustrating.
Yeah. I'm sure you guys would have kicked me out with my gateway computer with Windows 98. So, yeah, I mean, but, joking aside, I think you're hitting on something there that, there could be things that are kind of outside of people's control, but also almost considered to be a job requirement, too. So I think it will be interesting to see how they handle that. I think there's absolutely, I could see there also being like guild banks where it's not like where you're storing money that could be used by other people per se, but it's almost like the jeweler where you're staking X jewel. With the hints that the team was dropping that like eventually, like there would be incentives like league passes where you like stake so much X jewel for the month and you have access to a league pass where your benefits for questing are increased. No, they didn't come out and say that, but they mentioned that there could be a league pass-esque kind of feature. I could see that being incorporated with guilds, and you needing to hit like a 5,000 X jewel or 10,000 X jewel threshold, where if that guild stakes 10,000 X jewel between all of its players, and everyone still is in complete and total control of their own money, but as long as that guild stays above that threshold, that like they have access to a certain kind of quest rewards. I could see that being a real creative way to, kind of pool funds and also create some market stabilization, which I think would be a really good thing in the future.
I would love to see guild formation almost be like the formation of a company too. Like that could be really interesting of like have a really big number to be able to create a guild, call it like 10,000 jewel or something like that. And you have people stake different amounts to create this guild.
So you get different
And then
voting powers then.
yeah, and then you have different voting powers, and then you also have your distribution from a reward system perspective as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. All right, so I want to talk about one of the kind of the Ninorf was hinting at this, but something we were talking about a little bit in channel, and then I kind of ran with it a little bit last night, and wanted to throw these ideas out there on kind of what I'm thinking about for how land and guilds can work together, and then I have a bit of a guild battle proposal I'd like to throw at you guys too. So, like Neindorf was saying, I think as you're starting to develop land, I think land is going to have to be a key component to guilds. And so let's just say, for instance, that they are tied 1-to-1 or at least 1-to-many. In that, in order to have a guild, you have to have at least one parcel of land, but potentially a guild could manage multiple parcels of land. So I see the first quest being clearing the keep. If you zoom in on any of the land out there, Neindorf pointed this out, there's a lot of rubble there that it looks like in the land. And I think this fits well thematically with the game right now, that, people are starting to, heroes are returning to Serendale. They're being summoned into existence, or their existence is being brought forth, whatever it is. And, the land around these fiefdoms is unkept and not ready for construction or, buildings that eventually you'd like to put on the land. So you must clear the land before future building construction can begin. To clear the land, you must put your heroes and the heroes of your guild to work. So who can participate? My thought is landowners can keep a quest private if they're not a part of a guild, and they can just do it themselves. Or they can make this entire quest available to their guild, or they could make it fully available to the public if they'd like. And so here's how it works. And some of these numbers I'm just throwing out there as, take it for what it's worth, just a suggestion or an idea. But I think this is something we could dial in. So heroes are assigned to week-long quests. Each land needs 1,000 unique quests completed to finish. And this could be accomplished by up to you can have 250 heroes questing at one time. So the fastest that you could, clear the land and completely finish this quest for a guild would be 1 month time. The rewards, it would be equivalent to gold rewards of the level 10 gold mining quest, because you are clearing the land. You're clearing all these stones they're on this land. And so the idea is that anyone who has their hero go out on this week-long quest, when they come back, they get the mathematical equivalent of, if I sent my hero out for gold mining at profession level 10 quest, when that comes out, I get that much gold in return, minus what the landowner rake is. And my thought here is also, landowners would have some autonomy in figuring out, okay, do I want to take a 1% cut on fees? Do I want to take a 5% cut on fees, or 10%? And this would kind of be essentially lining potentially the coffers of the guild bank itself. And so I'm kind of using landowners and guild operators as, one and the same. So then another idea would be, it still maybe favors a little bit the side of the landowner or the guild owner. And so also then heroes that go on this week-long quest, what do they gain? They also gain experience, double experience for the mining profession quest, and the egg drop rate is doubled from what it is right now. And so the questers would receive all of those egg rewards, even though the landowners are taking a percent cut out of the gold that's being received. The egg owners, or the actual wallets for questing these heroes, would receive the eggs themselves. So kind of an idea around a community gathering together for a purpose, for a greater purpose. I want there to be incentives for the landowners and the guild organizers. I want there to be incentives for the guild members themselves as well. So what do you guys think about this? Poke holes in this, blow this up, totally stupid idea, good idea. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think you fantastic. When you look at the map and you look at all the different spots, you can see it's just laid out perfectly. Like, we're going to have to clear the land, and then once we clear the land, then we're going to have to build a foundation, and then we're going to eventually build a guild hall, and it's going to be like a wood guild hall, and then we're going to upgrade it to a stone one. I can definitely see and then you look on the map, you're like, oh, there's a DFK guild. They've got a stone castle. Look at them. They're and with that becomes again, running parallels to World of Warcraft, there was guild perks. So, the better your guild hall is, maybe you recover stamina faster, something like that. But I think you got to, your reckless speculation sounds pretty good with these plots.
So Tony Travels on YouTube here. He fell out of his chair when I said 1 month. He said, "I need a ROI as a landowner. I need a ROI faster than that." GuyKidd, what are your thoughts? And maybe can you, join Tony's side and convince me that maybe 1 month is too long?
Well, I like Tony's idea of everyone's got a big stack of jewel they need to mine to get out of the way. Sign everyone up for that play.
Yeah.
I think the idea makes a lot of sense, and there's a lot of interesting dynamics kind of at play here of like first is like doing quests with other people of kind of like Perilous Journey didn't quite do that, but it kind of had that end result of like, I like your idea of everyone queuing up towards some common goal that they're trying to accomplish together. I think there's a lot of dynamics that can be built around that in the game ecosystem long term, whether that's like PvE or world events or something like that. I think there could be a lot of interesting things there. I think the one thing that like the DFK team would come back to is what does this do to the overall quest fund wallet, and how does it help kind of the long-term DFK ecosystem too, of kind of like what goes back to the well, if you will, in a quest format like this.
So it's funny you mentioned that because I was posting and also in the chat, I was like, what if landowners have to pay taxes to the king, if you will?
Right.
I was like, because you're getting these benefits for having a guild and land. It's entirely feasible that you could have to pay some sort of taxes or something. Or maybe it's like you need to stake. I think, Raph, you might have had this idea that maybe you've got to have so much X jewel staked to be an active guild, and then you just don't get. Obviously, you get the benefit of X jewel, but maybe the team then gets to have some benefit where that X jewel gets to, maybe it gets paired in the garden for the quest fund. I have no idea, or something like that, where they get to have some income off of your stake. But there's so many things they could do to help, I think, help replenish those extra payouts that they have to do to give us these bonuses. So,
yeah,
I don't know. What do you guys think?
The thing that works with this, though, is it's a one-time thing. So it's not like it's a repeatable quest. So
true.
If they've kind of like, all right, we've got X amount allotted in the quest fund that we can do a drawdown for these one-time quest events, they could do something like that.
Oh, like you earmark so many jewel for this.
Interesting.
I like that. Yeah, that would work.
The rewards could be item based, and you could kind of keep pushing people in game as well with some other rewards. And while I think people want to eventually get there, I think you're touching on something that is critical. And let me digress for a moment and then go back to my original idea. That is that this is a pay to earn game, and so people will pay to play, pay to anything style game. And I think that just the fact of the matter that we all have to come to grips with at Neindorf, I know you talked about that, this is something that you and your coworker talk about, is that there are going to be people who invest and win in the game. And by that, I mean they invest and they're able to pull out money more than what they invest in the game. And of course, there are going to be people who invest in the game and conventionally lose, where they are actually losing money of what they put into the game. They are not able to get out as much money from the game. And that's just the way that economics work. And so I think that the key concept that has to be here for all of this to work, otherwise this entire game goes away, is that people have to be having fun. Because you have to be convincing that the people that are investing and then not getting that full investment back in money, that they are at least really enjoying the time that they're spending in game, or believe that they're going to get their investment out in the future. And I think ultimately, like, that has to be a key piece to all of this, is that people have to really enjoy what they're doing. And I think for them to enjoy what they're doing, we have the community aspects of the game right now. I think they've done a good job of that. And, well, we've done a good job of that when it comes to, Discord, YouTube, all the groups of people gathering together. But the game is, while it's fun to like try to get a summons or try to get a pet, there's no skill-based aspect to the game right now. And so I think this is where it has to come into some kind of PvP, or I think they could do this with like PvE in the large guild setting, which I guess kind of would be like guilds versus guilds, which is kind of PvP. And so I think as long as people are having fun and actually doing things and interacting with other groups, then I think it'll keep the ecosystem alive. So end of my digression there. What I want to propose to you guys next is a style of I'll call it PvP/PvE. So this would be Guild Quest Wars. The name is a work in progress, so stay with me. And here's how it works: is that guilds they enter into a month-long arrangement, a season, if you'll call it, a season pass, if you call it, where the guild has to stake some number of X Jewel into their guild bank. And so what does the game gain? Well, the game gains some tokenomic stability here. And during that month, or maybe you could split it up to a week inside each month, but you select one of the profession quests. And it probably couldn't be gardening for the points that you were raising there, GuyKidd, of it drawing down from the quest fund. But it could probably be gold mining, it could be fishing, and it could be foraging. Everything in that quest is boosted over that period of time. And so the rewards are, 1.5x or 2x what you otherwise would get. Now, here's the catch. Those rewards are locked, and they're locked for that entire season. And so those rewards that are coming in, and maybe you could do this in week-long chunks, because I was already scaring Tony with how long I was planning on having land unlock be. But if you had these reward locks in week-long chunks, other guilds could engage in guild combat within those weeks. And let's say you also cap it for the sake of reasonability, where you can only attack another guild X number of times, and that a single guild can only be attacked X number of times. So you can't like totally wipe out someone's treasury. And so you would perform what I'm considering to be like challenge raids. And during that period of time, you can select the heroes that you want to send out to go fight another guild. And there's different kinds of challenge raids that would be based on stats. So I'm diving deep here. So there's a battering ram challenge raid, and it's a brute force challenge that requires endurance and vitality. A successful raid steals up to 10% of that guild's rewards over that period of time. And so if that guild is earning 2x, let's say they select fishing for a week, and our guild performs a successful raid, at the end of that week, when their fishing rewards are about to be paid out, instead of paying out at 2x what those fishing rewards are, they get paid out at 90% of that 2x. And so that the other rewards then go to the directly to the guild that was the raider. And so kind of the payouts here, GuyKidd, to tie to your original question, is more so based in-game items than it is in actual jewel here. So I'll throw a few other ideas out of challenge raids, but I want to give you guys a chance to rebuttal or ask any clarifying questions first. So, Neindorf, poke some holes in this. You go first.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great. I think that, it kind of brings you to a point where, since you're getting, and maybe this speaks back to GuyKidd's answer or question, where how do you kind of temper some of these extra rewards? I think it's maybe the fact that they can be stolen from you, and you can actually get extra rewards by stealing more from other people. It's what can keep people coming back to the game. I think that's where I keep going back to. And we were chatting a little bit earlier about, maybe it's just the people who are going to quote unquote lose. They're not really losing because they're being entertained. And so, kind of a segue question, not to interrupt a little bit, but how much is a person willing to be entertained across a month? I mean, if a person's willing to spend $30 a month to come to this game once or twice a day and be entertained, absolutely. That can keep this economy going indefinitely.
Right, right. All
I
right.
think your biggest
Yeah, go ahead.
I think the biggest thing you're going to have to watch for is just balance. Like I know for at least PvP on the World of Warcraft side, they were just a constant heavy hand of like when something became the meta, it was like everybody did that, and if you weren't following that, you were going to lose every time. So there's just going to have to be balance on how these raids go, and otherwise it's just going to be no fun for the people that can't keep up, and that's kind of hard to do with a decentralized blockchain game. But these they've shown that they can balance things as they need to be balanced. But I think some of the rewards maybe can be paid out kind of like how they were going to do with Lock Jewel. You can use that rather than just dumping tokens. You can use that for summoning. You can use it for duels.
Hmm.
You can use it to just keep everything in the game. Because for me personally, I don't really care if my jewel's unlocked if I can use it for summoning because I'm summoning all the time. So I'll just keep it locked and use it for summoning. And that way it keeps the tokenomics, stable. Because they got to balance too. The same thing. This is also a game, but it's also a financial project too. So it's you're gonna have to balance both worlds.
Yeah, I like that,
Good
and
point.
I think that's key to their future success is to kind of keep these layers in the game that and I don't want to say like unwittingly trick people into continuing to summon, but I mean to a certain extent, I mean you're doing that because you find that to be fun and enjoyable, and so yeah, you're instead of dumping that jewel and just cashing out, I mean you're wanting to play the game, and I hope that that's what they end up doing is trying to create and allow that, I think as well. And so whether you're getting items or token payouts that are like in-game items that you could use, you could also sell them, or it could just allow you to only use those rewards for in-game actions. I think that's a really good idea. So let me clarify a couple other items here, and then I'll get your guys' feedback again. So, and there's a good question here from Worm, asking Sir Worm, I believe, saying, "Is there a downside if you raid and lose?" And I think what I would say to Sir Worm is, I would say generally in my first iteration of this, I've thought like no, beyond there being an opportunity cost. And that if your guild is limited to 5 raids during this period of time, you're potentially losing out, and other people could be raiding you at the same time. And so, your possible loss there is opportunity cost. So here's where I think, like blockchain combat could be really powerful is if someone else is raiding you, I'd love for there to be a feature that gives you a chance for, your town or your guild to scramble to the defenses. And I think this is where the game would benefit from being a 24-hour game is, like maybe your guild has 6 hours to respond, and they can try to prepare the defenses for the opposing raid. And I think this would be increasingly fun if there was multiple kinds of challenge raids. So I gave you guys the idea of a battering ram raid. Well, what if there was a sneak into the treasury raid, and this was based on, heroes coming in with high dexterity and luck, they're more likely to succeed. And what if there was like a strategic battle raid where a well-planned battle is based on wisdom and strength? And then there's also a raid for like supply chain restriction, and that thwarts the opponent's ability to, traverse the supply chains of their land, and that tests intelligence and agility. And so there's these 4 different, you're essentially tapping into each of the different stat points. And then when you go to defend, it'd be great if there was like limited knowledge to what the opponent is attacking with. And that limited knowledge could be unlocked or revealed more clearly if you perform more in-game activities. And so, maybe at a town of level 0, you have no idea how the opponent's going to hit you, and you try to muster the best defense that you can, but you might be getting challenged against endurance and vitality, and the heroes that you put up, they're more generalists, and you end up losing that challenge, and they have a successful raid. And as the defender, you lose 10% of your possible income. But then, go ahead.
I like where you're going with it too, and I think the timer could really be tied to travel time.
Oh, okay.
And
Yes.
the larger the army, the longer the travel time too. So you can see an attack's being launched on you that's 6 hours out, 9 hours out, 12 hours out. And then it would be interesting of you can basically do all these defensive quests, if you will.
Yeah.
Of you could send a scout out or something like
Yeah.
that, figure out what these numbers look like to kind of prepare the defenses like what you're talking about.
Yeah, Sir Worm read my mind. You could build a lookout tower to gain extra knowledge. That's exactly what I was thinking. Is like you construct a building on your land, and that building allows you to have, a 50% chance of seeing what kind of attack it is, and then you could muster up a better defense. And of course, then I think this is where the game could really start to like stack all these concepts. Is like land development is almost like a intro to building quests. And then you could have building quests on your land where it requires you to use materials that eventually you get from quests, and it requires you to spend jewel. And so you could ask your guild to, ante up for that. And so let's say, the sentry tower requires 5,000 jewel across the entire guild. It requires, 2,000 stone and 400 lumber. And then there's another quest period where you are actually having to build the sentry tower. And so you have to stake, I don't know, we'll call it a slightly lesser number than clear the land, but you have to stake 20 heroes to that week-long quest. And based on their, stats in strength and endurance is how fast they'll build that tower. And then, the guild gains from, having a better tower of where, you can defend against attacks. And then the individuals, the players gain by, hey, it's another awesome quest where I gain double experience by sending my hero out there. It's also a way to, it's not as effective to bot if, you have a week-long quest. Like, that doesn't make me want to go buy a bot because it's really easy to click a hero once and send them out for a week-long quest. So that's some of my ideas of where I was going. I realize I'm really all over the place here.
But I like what you're doing too, because it's allowing you to do that strategy of like maximizing the resources you have to counterpoint or counterattack whatever the opponents are doing. Like maybe you could also do like a meet me in the field and also like a champion versus champion battle too. Of like,
yeah, that'd be great. Like at the start of Troy.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and keep in mind that I'm almost guaranteeing you, this is me wildly speculating, of course, that the spaces on this land is going to be limited. You're not going to be able to build every building, right? I just foresee that being the case. Or it'll be like Sim City where a building has so much coverage, right? And you can't cover everything. So you're going to have to choose wisely, in a mistake early on in choosing the wrong building type could be costly. Maybe it takes 3 times as long, or I don't know, half as long, whatever, to demo a building, and you lose all those resources if you need to change gears.
Yeah, I think you're right. Or like double down and invest more resources. And I think then, that creates an opportunity to, add more jewel to the quest fund. So, you could change the dynamics of if it costs you, 5,000 jewel to build a upgraded walls around your keep, or enhanced gardens, or, a fishery with boats. You could, that jewel, you could, the game developer, so DeFi Kingdom Studios could pick amounts to burn, certain amounts of jewel to burn, certain amounts of jewel to go back into the quest fund. And I'm saying jewel, but this will probably be clay or crystal. So you could kind of play with some of those totals of those in-game buildings to try to, keep the economy in full circle. All right. Are you guys there?
Still
Of
here.
course.
Okay.
I was just thinking
I
that
just
maybe you
been
dropped a
taking
lot
all
there.
this in.
The mind
There's
is
a lot of
going.
information.
I have been that's I think I'll admit selfishly here, after we bought the land, that's when my mind started spinning. I was like, okay, I want this land to start making sense and doing something. But I try to think about it from really a guild perspective as well, and I think we have to keep coming back to how do you build a balanced game that is fun to play for the players, and that investment makes sense for the whales, or the Tonys out there who invested in land and they're ready for their ROI.
Yeah, and you need
Balance is
to.
going to be key,
Sorry, I
for
was just
sure.
gonna say you need to get a place that the heroes are usable, and if they really want to be, like you said, anti-bot and not like actively anti-bot, but just in style, I suppose. These sorts of quests that we're talking about are absolutely perfect for that. And it'll help, you know. And then there's the whole other aspect for another episode of Dark Summoning that we'll have to get into, but for now we'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's close up the episode here. We're at an hour and 20 minutes, which I knew this one would be long, but maybe not this long. Let's give YouTube a chance to send in a few questions here. And the first question, I'll throw this over to you, Kels. And someone's asking, Jordy's asking, do you foresee Gen Zeros being more valuable than Jewel in the long outlook? What are your thoughts on that?
Oh man, I guess that depends on what you consider on value return. I mean, if you're just looking for price, I mean, obviously, you may be able to do better in just Jewel or whatever. But if you're going to be active in the game, if you're going to have Gen Zeros, if you're going to be summoning, if you're going to be leveling them up, if you're going to be doing all that, then you probably can get a slow and steady uh, return in the game. And then you'll also have heroes on top of that too. You can build an army on top of that. So it just depends on how when people ask that question, it just depends on how you're building the game, how you're playing the game. Are you playing this to build an army? Are you playing this to just farm in the gardens and make money? It's just all how you're going to do it.
Yeah, I like that. And, just a quick reminder to everyone out there, this is reckless speculation, not financial advice. So,
Very reckless.
yes. Yeah, I think everyone has to decide how they want to be playing the game. And so let's go to, throw it out there to our YouTube listeners. Any other questions? I'm going to scroll up through the chat. So go ahead and throw some more questions out there. Let's close out with maybe a couple more. I don't see any within quick succession here. So, Neindorf or GuyKidd, do you have any questions or some burning questions that you've been thinking about?
Nothing particular on my side. I do want to just give a quick plug. We're doing a Fight Club tournament this upcoming weekend.
Nice.
So if anyone's itching for some PvP, itching for some combat, our good friend Tylus, aka Brad Pitt, has been building this awesome PvP Discord-based game, and we're going to do a tournament this weekend. And every 24 hours that goes by, the reward pool keeps getting better and better. Mosh, one of the big Twitter guys following the DFK space, actually threw a legendary pet into the prize pool as well today.
Yeah, that got me excited. I was like, all right, maybe I actually need to play.
Yeah, I'm sad I'm gonna be on vacation out that next week there. I was like, the first one was fun. I noobed out right away, but it was still a ton of fun to watch. And even after I was out, some of the following battles, like it's pretty intense watching people play. And I think we should, if you guys are down for it or whatnot, and or there's availability, getting like people in voice chat while they play is so much fun. Hearing the kind of the poker game being played.
Yeah.
That sounds like a lot of fun. That brings another element to it.
Oh, it's amazing.
All right, Sir Worm has some questions here. Any summoning tonight, and then quickly followed by when Crypto Grady Fight Club stream. Yes, I was committing to a Fight Club stream with Crypto Grady last night, and I could not handle the heat of the Crypto Grady with the frequency of streams that he does. So we were up on Saturday night. We stayed up till like 1:30 a.m. my time. We just kept talking on the video that he released, and then my Gen 1s, my youngest Gen 1 turned around and decided that getting up at 5:30 was her plan for the day. So I was running on, I didn't have a lot of gas last night, so I have to reschedule with him. I'm hoping to get that in before the weekend, so we can continue to promote Fight Club. Summoning tonight. I do not have any summons tonight. I don't know about you guys. We really need to just figure out like a schedule. This was not my idea. I think I can't remember whose idea this was, but great idea. But we need to just like pick out like Wednesday nights or something like that. It's like if we do a pod, it's always after Wednesday nights, or even without a pod, Wednesday nights everyone jumps on the stream and does summoning night. I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah,
Yeah, I
that
think it's
sounds great.
schedule. Go ahead, sorry.
I think it sounds great, just so that way guys can have like their pairs ready. If we know like it's gonna be every Wednesday, let's everything's, have your eggs ready, all that. It just makes it simple rather than just being like, oh, I just summoned yesterday, I can't do it.
Right. Okay, Sergeant Filthy McNasty, maybe this will be last question here. I was listening to some chat about in-game items that made me question the rationale of hoarding inflationary items. Thoughts? So
I think it depends.
Yeah,
I think it depends. Because I mean, technically, Jewel it was inflationary. I mean, we like to hoard that, so I guess it just depends on how inflationary and what it's used for. If it's like a lot of these items that are inflationary, they have good uses. So
Yeah, I mean, you just look at the Stampot craze, and it's like when the utility of these other potions and the other items come, you got to assume that the change in price will happen as well. I do think we're kind of at a weird point of I'd be curious if their original roadmap, if they were expecting level 0 quests to be the quests for as long as they have been. And due to that, I wonder if we have an oversupply of our current items. But it'll be interesting to see come kind of next tier of profession quests if there's different items or not, and what that looks like.
I agree. And I think, they could always pull future in-game levers to make things more deflationary. Like maybe equipment starts to, use some of the fishing or mining quest rewards or the foraging quest rewards faster than they're being supplied. And so, I could even see us getting to a point where you even have to make the decision between like, do I want to go after a profession level 10 quest, which nets my hero more experience, or do I want to go after the profession level 1 quest where I get more items because that might have more financial value? I think that would be a neat way to add more player choice into the game.
And they've even said themselves, like feeding pets. So we have no, we just sit there with pets now. But can you imagine, like when they start eating bloaters, and like you're gonna have 1,000 bloaters, and actually have use for them.
Nom nom. Yep.
Yeah.
Like I told you, I'm hoarding it all.
Yeah, and you got that back from Tango when you were out at ETH Denver. He said they were really eating bloaters.
Yes, I was like, that was some alpha drop way back when, and we're still waiting. It'll come true. Don't worry.
Eventually, yeah. All right. Well, thank you guys for joining this. A lot of fun. I appreciate you guys staying long. And all the viewers out there, thank you for this. Drop us a like and subscribe if you will. And let's keep the conversation going over on Discord. I really feel like this is the community's, thing to weigh in on. So I'm planning on at some point here in the next week, posting some kind of Rapid R. And I'd actually like to accompany with that a whole bunch of ideas for like different building construction. So, we talked about there, being the clearing the land quest, about building a sentry tower. I pitched a delay in general chat. Like I'd love to eventually have there be like a salon or a barber shop where you can work on the visuals of your hero and you can modify the genes of your visuals. I think that'd be really neat. So I think the possibilities for what kind of buildings you can build on land are near limitless. And I'd like to flush out some of those ideas and eventually post this in a Rapid R post that we can give to the DeFi Kingdoms team, and meant to be like a collection or a living document of here are the ideas, here's what we want to see for guilds. So thank you guys for joining me tonight. Thank you, YouTubers, and this is Raph signing out.